start. We're continuing this conversation here in Montreal, Quebec, and today we have Myriam Bohémier. Hopefully I got that well enough, because what we're going to do is continue the conversation about the referendum, 1995. Here in Quebec, there was a big movement to go ahead and separate. Some of the history that people don't understand or maybe not even been paying attention to, we'll be covering that today, because she's a lawyer, an advocate, a commissioner from the NCI, and many other hats. Thank you very much, Myriam, for being here today.
Hey, thanks to receive me.
Yeah. So as we kind of touched there, you carry a lot of hats on that head of yours. Beautiful red hair, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm a complete oneself now.
So you grew up with a history teacher you were mentioning just before we got started.
Yeah.
So your father was a history teacher?
Yeah, it was.
We're going to challenge some of that history knowledge of yours today.
I don't have the same vision as he have on history. Now I read here in Quebec we have an author called Sylvain Laforêt. He wrote many books on history, and we have a complete different history now with him. So I don't think my father would align with this story from Sylvain Laforêt.
Well, take us through some of your NCI work, because you're very, very passionate and you do a lot of work to ensure that the truth comes out. Yeah. And this is something you've been doing with the NCI. Can you take us through a little bit of your work there?
Yeah, it started in 2022. Then it was called the National Citizens Hearings. And I testified on June 22nd, 2022, 24th. Yeah, actually it was a Quebec Celebration Day. And after that, they created the NCI. And I testified in 2023. And after, I was to be a counsel to help Sean. And they asked me if I would consider to come as somebody else with another function. And I said, which one? And they talked about being a commissioner. So I applied and I was selected as a commissioner since Vancouver. It was in October 2024. And now we had 3 sets of hearings since then. And it's very, how can I say that? It's connections with people, their story. You cannot stay cold when you hear those stories. You just relate to those persons. And you were in front of me in Edmonton when Nicole Morier testified about her daughter who died from turbo cancer. And I was crying my life. And you were looking at me and I was looking at you. We were both crying. She was like poker face. I don't know. She was like calm and everything, but a calm that is suffering a lot. And so that brings our humanity out, and we get along. So for me, as a Quebecer, being with all these people from other parts of Canada, I just feel we are family. And I would like so much that all Quebecers speak English in order that we are all together. It's fine to speak French. It's fine to keep our culture, but our culture is really close from the Canadian one. And we are very isolated by the fact that a lot of Quebecers don't speak English, and you're not losing your language and you're not losing your culture because you speak 2 languages. That's my point of view. It's just enriching yourself, you know?
So bilingualism to you is a ticket to go ahead and understand the rest of Canada, be connected, and
Yeah.
share some of that history together?
Yeah, not be isolated. And in Quebec, sometimes we have an expression saying that we are under a dome. So it's like I think as many things, our culture becomes something used against us in order to be isolated and not to know what is happening elsewhere. So, like many other things, virtue is used against people to push narratives on people, and nobody can be against the virtue, So everybody thinks it's good, but then they see the reality under it. So I think it's the same right now. Like our culture is used against us in a way because it isolates us from the rest of the world.
No, fair enough, because like you said, it puts you into a bubble, the way you put it.
Yeah.
Bit of a dome
Yeah.
that covers basically Quebec. Now, you're young like the rest of us in this conversation, so 1980, when there was the first referendum, with that really long question, 58% of Quebecers at that time said no, not to separate. Do you remember some of that time, and what is the history that's taught in Quebec about that particular referendum?
I was 5 years old, so I don't remember anything. I just remember René Lévesque, who said, vous êtes en train de me dire à la prochaine fois. So you are saying to me, see you next time. Then I was really, because my father was a history teacher, politics and history was something we were talking a lot at home. So I was very interested about all those issues, and I wanted to have a country with Quebec. I was for the yes at that time. So in 1995, but I must say that we had the impression that the rest of Canada was not liking Quebec. And we were not recognized as a distinct culture. There was what we call the night of the long knives. So we felt we were under treason, but Pierre-Éliott Trudeau was a Quebecer too, René Lévesque and Pierre-Éliott Trudeau were two Quebecers. So we felt a bit probably some kind of treason. And in 1995, I was really happy to have another chance to. Then I was able to vote. I was only maybe
20
years old. So it was one of the first time I was voting. Yeah.
No, very good. And you did bring up Pierre-Éliott Trudeau. In Alberta, that's a swear word, so we may have to bleep that out in Alberta. But that was an interesting thing. A Quebecer who is saying no to separation and kind of made a bit of a promise, said, well, we're going to do this constitution thing. We're going to separate from England and become our own independent country, and maybe made some promises that he didn't quite keep in 1982. Do you remember the history of that? Did that upset Quebec at that time?
The fact that they brought the constitution back and they made changes without the Quebec consent was felt like a treason. I think at that time we were seeing the fact that there was a charter added to the constitution as a good thing. I studied the charter story during my law school. So we thought it was an improvement. But then COVID hits. We saw it Oh, it doesn't help much.
You saw for what it truly was, which was another way to kind of remove some of the rights, give the power to the government. Section 1.
Yeah, Section 1.
Right.
Yeah.
That turned out to be, when it was tested, not for the benefit of the
But
people.
at the beginning, with some justices like Justice Wilson, Justice Leroux Dubé, Justice Laforêt, Laskin, those judges were trying to open to use the charter, and we had like some moments where the rights were upheld and recognized, and then there was like another another movement, and they went the other way. The Supreme Court changed. So now it's like, sometimes I was reading the judgments and I was like, oh, that's all beautiful. But at the end, I know the person will not qualify. You read that, it's all beautiful on paper, but they will say this person won't get anything. But it's not always the case. But there was a change in the philosophy, in the application of the charter. It's like if they said, oh, we gave too much, we'll change the movement, and now they are more going with the government. I think that's my impression, but that's pretty much what we see. For example, I don't know of any COVID-19 cases that were authorized to be heard by the Supreme Court of Canada. Maybe I'm wrong, but as far as I know, there's no COVID-19 cases that were authorized to be heard by the Supreme Court of Canada.
So what you're saying is, when the charter first came out, it was a positive. It looked like a positive.
Yeah.
It had all the right wording, it had all the right protection, it even had the supremacy of God in it.
Yeah.
And when I spoke to Brian Peckford, we kind of highlighted 3 major problems that kind of came almost immediately after the charter was signed. One was the supremacy of God was kind of overlooked. They called it a preamble. The next one was the living tree doctrine. So you would have learned this in law school, where they say that the charter itself in our Constitution changes with society. So it's more of a living tree. And then the oak test itself became a problem because it put the power into the courts to decide whether or not the government can use Section 1.
Yeah.
So that's what the Oak's test was. Now, the Oak test didn't bring God into it, didn't bring morality into it, kind of just ignored that entire line that was put at the beginning of the charter.
Yeah.
So those 3 things kind of started to water down the charter and really shifted, maybe by design, to the government, the power to the government, and not from the people.
If you take Article 7 too, you have the fundamental justice principles. So you have another test plus the Oak test to apply. So it's like heavy burden to meet when you want to have your rights respected.
Now, in common law, we have this principle called reverse onus, where you put the onus onto the victim or the other side instead of where it should be. You're innocent until proven guilty. But in some cases, you have a reverse onus where the defendant needs to prove themselves innocent. That's kind of what the Oak's test in Article 7, as you mentioned there, did. It put the onus on the people to go ahead and fight for their rights, when as you would expect it to be the default. It would be the government that needs to reach a certain barrier or bar.
Yeah, and this reasoning, I did some unemployment cases about people who refused to be jobbed and lost their job, and they were asking for unemployment benefits, and for me it was like clear that their fundamental rights were infringed, but the court said we had to prove that their rights were infringed.
Right.
But it's like clear, crystal clear, that if you force somebody to have a shot, so you're going against its bodily integrity. But we had to prove that. It was strange for me. Something's wrong with that. It's like the evidence. It's clear. It's crystal clear.
Yeah, that's kind of the reverse onus that I'm talking about. It's like
Yeah.
asking somebody who was murdered to prove that they were murdered. They are murdered. It's pretty self-evident right there.
Yeah.
So, but now as we move back to 1995, here
Yeah.
we are again, a prime minister from Quebec, Chrétien, and here we are again, another referendum question.
Yeah.
And this time, you were more involved, your first
Yeah.
time to vote.
Yeah.
So, and you were, I believe you were in an English-speaking university at the time?
Yeah, I was going to McGill University. I was studying, I was in law school, studying law. And it was not easy to be a francophone in an anglophone school. And McGill University is a big institution, so it was really not a good time to be in McGill University. Not because the people were not nice. It's just that it was divisive, you know. People were mostly on the side of the no. I was on the side of the yes. And there was a lot of young students coming from immigrant family, but for them they were accepted in Canada. They were adopted by Canada, so they were really afraid what will happen to them if the Quebec divide from the rest of Canada. So it was really emotional at times. Because people were really afraid. And then we had this big march. We learned that the federal government paid people from the rest of Canada to come in Montreal say to us that they loved us. They didn't want us to quit. And when we learned those people were paid to do that, it felt again like a treason. So I think there was, what was his name? The prime minister at that time was very deceived when the result was 49-51 and really close. And he said it was the fault of the ethnic and English vote, I think. That's what he said. And it was not he had to resign after that. So that's the kind of thing you cannot say. So I think after that, my thinking was, okay, you asked us twice. We said twice no. So now can we move on? Because every election, it was always, you had to vote for Parti Québécois or Parti Libéral. Then it's one was for secession and the other was for being in Canada. So it was always a constitutional issue that was brought by those parties, and we were not going elsewhere. And it was like, okay, can we address the real problems we have here in Quebec? And can we deal with those problems? And right now, I think the same thing. I don't think the constitutional issue is really important. It's like putting the attention on something that is irrelevant for the moment. For the moment, we have problem with healthcare. We have problem with our children, with education. We owe so much money that can we say we are a free country in Canada or in Quebec? That's the same. When you owe so much money to banks or other parties, can you decide your own policies? So what will be the difference if we are in Canada or outside Canada? I don't trust the authorities that we have, the political authorities we have in Quebec, and I don't trust the one we have in Canada, because they don't have the well-being of Canadians at heart. That's clear. That's clear for me with all that I know from the NCI.
Yeah, you definitely learned a lot about whether or not the federal government cares about Canadians in general, whether it's healthcare, economic, global, geopolitical, and even defense. Like, we're now aligning with Europe, and there could be a way for Canadians to end up in the Ukraine-Russia war, for example. Before you know it, our young people might be going to Europe to fight another war.
And I don't know if you would agree with me, but my conclusion after the Edmonton hearings was that they render people sick with many means. They have no solutions, no services, and then they offer aid. That's the system we have right now. You remember the woman, she was about 25 years old. She started to take puberty blockers and everything, then she stopped. She had suicidal thoughts. She went to the hospital to get services.
In BC.
To prevent her suicide, and they said to her, you cannot see a psychologist or a psychiatrist before 7 months, but we can offer you aid. That's the system we have. So for me, Quebec, to be in Canada or elsewhere, I mean, that's irrelevant. We have to take care of the people, whoever they are, wherever they are. That's what is frightening me when I hear those stories. This woman wanted to live. This woman was already abused, traumatized. They offered her no option except for puberty blockers. It affected her worsely than she was before, and then she's left alone and we offer her aid. That's disgusting.
So as we make our way through 95 and it comes back as a no by about 50,000 votes total, basically everything ended there. That was the movement stopped. There was no third attempt.
No third attempt, but the question was always brought back again and again in every election until maybe the CAQ was involved. And then the CAQ was more in the center of the constitutional question. We are nationalist, but we are not going to get out of Canada, but we are to fight for the distinct society. So we are in between two chairs, like, but yeah. So it may come back. The question may come back. But Quebec now, I think, like we receive a lot of money from the federal government, and in Alberta, in Edmonton, we had this man from I don't know which party he was in, but he explained that that's how the federal government controls what is happening in the other provinces. In the provinces, they grant the money to the provinces if you do this or that.
Right.
So I'm sure Quebec has his hands tied with the federal government for money, and they receive money from Alberta. So, and we are so in debt. I don't see any party that will bring back this question seriously. I don't think so.
So one thing you're talking about there is the equalization payment, and Quebec has been labeled as a have-not province, and that's why the have provinces, like Alberta, contribute to the have-not. Now, a quarter of the population of Canada lives in Quebec. It's one of the largest provinces in Canada with natural resources, lumber, gas, hydro. But how is it that you're a have-not province? It seems like a second-class citizen label.
Yeah, I think so. I don't understand. I don't understand. I don't know. We are so taxed. We should be able, and we are creative people. I think we are rich in the sense when you speak French and English, you have more ability. You can do things that other people cannot do. Because you speak two languages, it should open doors. So I don't understand why we struggle so much. It's like something is covering the pot.
Almost by design.
No.
Maybe keep you as a welfare state, keep you suppressed,
No.
maybe dependent on the federal government and how it can go ahead and control you through money.
Yeah.
Because 10% of the population lives in Alberta, but at least $12 billion a year or $1 billion a month goes from Alberta to Quebec to support the other 25% of Canada. Do you think that system is suppressing the ability of Quebec to go ahead and become more prosperous?
No, I don't think it's this system. I cannot explain it. As I said earlier, I think our culture is now used against us. Not in the mean that we expand ourselves, we become more autonomous. We can use it as a tool, but it's used to isolate us.
That dome again.
Yeah. So that's why I think we are not able to expand, and I think it's done on purpose. We saw what Canada is doing to its population, and it's the same in Quebec, and maybe I don't know if it's worse in Quebec than Canada is. The federal government, it's very something, but Quebec too. They are still changing for the healthcare system. I don't know how much time they changed it in the last years, but it's still not working, and you still don't get much services through this system.
Does Quebec have an appreciation for Alberta when it comes to sending money over? Or is it kind of like what the mainstream media portrays, where Quebec hates Alberta and Alberta hates Quebec? Like, what is the actual view of Alberta from Quebecers like yourself?
I cannot.
If any.
Yeah, I can't. I'm not listening to mainstream media anymore, so I don't know what the view is. But for the people that I know who are more aware of what is happening, everyone envy Alberta. Everyone would like to have Danielle Smith as a prime minister. And for sure, I understand that she cannot necessarily do whatever she wants, because there's powers in place, and there is forces struggling one against the other. But most people that I know would like to live in Alberta, and I know a lot of Quebecers who moved to Alberta. So right now, Alberta is our best friend. Yeah.
No, that's in your group, but would you consider your group the majority or the common view of Quebecers?
I don't know, but the thing is, they want us to believe that we are a fringe minority, but I don't think we are a fringe minority. Like a month ago, I gave a conference in front of lawyers and judges, and I spoke about freedom of expression. And I didn't know those people, and they probably are not in the conspirational theorist world, but they all agreed with me. They said to me, the way you bring things, we cannot disagree with you. And I spoke about the NCI, the mainstream media. I spoke about the Online Safety Acts, the Bill C-63 that was to be like an online safety act, but we don't have it now because of the elections. I spoke about the gender identity issue, a lot of things. And I said, in our field as lawyers, if we don't have the freedom of expression, what is the future of our profession? And they agreed. They liked my presentation. So I think most people, when they listen carefully, they are still understand what is common sense. So maybe sometimes they don't have the right information because it's a war of information. But when you give them the information, and then they, not all, but some will understand, and a lot of them saw that there was a problem with all the COVID thing. And once the door is open, it's like everything is falling. COVID, with the vaccine, it opened the door for all the other vaccines. We are questioning everything. We are questioning climate change now. We are questioning the medias. We are questioning everything that we believed that was true. I remember at first when Trump was talking about alternative facts and the mainstream medias that were lying, I was like, what? And now we know it's true, because of what happened with COVID. So I think the crack is there, and more people are seeing it. So they will just look to Alberta, and I cannot talk for the people I never spoke with, but I think we look to Alberta as a safe haven. Yeah.
Now, do you see that as a safe haven because that's somewhere you may end up? Or do you think Alberta taking these steps might fix the rest of Canada by maybe introducing a new provincial deal or some more autonomy or sovereignty across Canada?
I don't know. We're just looking to Alberta and thinking, oh God, you're lucky, and please do something. We'll follow you, like the truckers. Yeah.
No, fair enough. Now, if Alberta does go ahead and have the referendum and it turns out to be a yes, that'll be the first time a province inside of Canada voted yes to leaving Canada. Quebec came close, but Alberta could be the first to do that. Do you think that might reignite the conversation in Quebec? Maybe separation could be back on the table, burst that bubble or that dome, and actually become your own nation?
Yeah, probably it will bring back this question. Well, I think the young generation is less interested in politics. Dr. Julie Panesi, when she testified, she was a teacher in a university, a bioethic teacher, and she saw that more and more students don't want to take position because they are afraid of backlash, and probably they don't even have a position neither. So I don't know, with the new generation, could we have this debate, or are they really far from it?
Well, good news is in Alberta, the largest group that's supporting independence is the 18 to 34. So the
Great.
young group, it's over 50% with that group. It's the older group, so the boomers, as you would call them, that is very, very low support there. Do you think that it's because the young people are starting to wake up and realize that they don't have much of a future here in the current Canada, and they need to have some more prosperity and future for themselves? Or do you think they just kind of just given up with the idea of Canada as you and I grew up in, as being something that they're going to grow up in?
Really don't know. I really don't know. But that's really encouraging that your youth is seeing things and wanting to engage in society. Yeah, that's good. Really.
Now, do you understand why Alberta is looking at this question again, since Carney has become the prime minister, and it seems like the tides are right, or is it almost like a perfect storm where things are coming together? Do you understand why Alberta is pushing?
I have a feeling of it, but you can explain to me, then I'll understand better.
Well, I'm just trying to get your outside perspective. So as a Quebecer who saw the 95 referendum, you voted yes to separating. Could you understand why another province would also want to vote yes?
Yeah, I can understand Alberta would like to separate in the situation where the federal government as far as I know, Carney is really involved on the question of climate change, and Alberta wants to use its resources, and it may go against the narrative about the climate change. Also, Alberta is supporting a lot of Canada, and the money goes a lot of places that we don't want our money to go, like Ukraine or other things like that. And we have more and more rules that are against people, and I think Danielle Smith is more aware of the harms done to the population, and she cares more. She probably cares more than Mark Carney. And there is also the question of immigration, probably, that it's a big problem.
Yeah, Alberta certainly gets a disproportionate number of immigrants into Edmonton and Calgary, and you see that that's moving everything more and more to the left each time. Now, some of the numbers that have been released is $70 billion is sent from Alberta to Ottawa, but $12 billion in services come back to Alberta. So when you look at those kind of numbers, are you surprised that many Albertans are fed up with sending so much money over to Ottawa for whatever they use it for and receiving very little back in services?
Yeah, for sure. I can understand fully. And myself, I don't recognize the Canada I grew up in, and when I traveled in 1993, I was 18 years old. I discovered that I was proud to be Canadian when I went to France and everything, because we were seen as nice people, polite, open. But now I don't feel proud anymore to be Canadian. I feel oppressed to be Canadian. And I don't recognize this country.
That's a shared feeling, I got to tell you, in Alberta. We don't normally introduce ourselves as Canadians anymore. We're Albertans. And I see the same thing here in Quebec. So as I've been driving across the country, the only province that actually feels very Canadian would be Ontario. If you look around at the businesses, there's a lot of Canadian flags. But in Alberta, there's a lot of Albertan flags. If there's one flagpole, it'll have an Alberta flag. If there's two flagpoles, then you'll see one of each. I see the same thing here in Quebec. There's a lot more Quebec flags than Canadian flags. Is that an identity thing, or do we really not feel Canadian anymore?
I think it was always like this. It's a question of identity. I think people feels they are Quebecers first and Canadians second. And I always felt I was a Quebecer, but when I went in France, then I discovered I was a Canadian. And then I was proud to be a Canadian. But when I was a kid, I was a Quebecer. Yeah.
No, I do feel that way as well. I grew up in Manitoba and did my younger years in Ontario. And I can tell you that Ontario does feel like the center of Canada and is very Canadian. And as Carney and Pierre were doing their election and they're doing their campaigns, it was elbows up, Canada first, Canada strong, you hear all that mantra. But not out west. We didn't have that. So during the election, was it the same kind of sentiment here in Quebec? Was it very Canada first, or was it Quebec first?
I really didn't follow the elections. I think what was striking me the most was the fact that, and again, it's the problem of Quebecers who doesn't speak English, because Carney was saying things in English in other parts of Canada, and he was saying things here in Quebec that was completely the opposite. So then you can see that this guy is telling lies to somebody. You know, you cannot say one thing and the contrary the other day. So I think this election was really, really dull in Quebec. Not much was happening. And we were trying to have at least, there's a lot of Quebecers not around me who doesn't want to vote anymore. They think it's not worth it. And any party you're voting doesn't change anything. But I pushed for the PPC at least as an option, because if we don't vote, then we give up. We give up. So at least we have an option, somebody who knows what is happening. So we can try. We can try and we'll see what happens. But never, if you do nothing, then you lose. For sure, you lose. So for me, I like to be in action, even though I don't know what will come out of it. I prefer doing something. I prefer to be involved. I prefer to be an NCI commissioner. I prefer to be involved in any way I can, to be on the board of the CHA, Canada Health Alliance. I prefer not to be a victim, but to act and to have some empowerment by acting in reality. If not, then I think we let them win. At least we can slow them down.
Slow them down. Do you have any final comments for Albertans?
I have many Albertans friends now, and I must say to them, hello, and I love you. I love you guys. I hope I'll come back, see you soon.
We'd love to have you back, Myriam. Thank you very much for your work. And it was great to meet you in Edmonton, and I hope you come back sometime soon. Thank you for your time and thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Well, there you are, Alberta. Look, let's not give up. Quebec did it a couple times, but then kind of stopped. And what we need to do is make sure that we're focused on our prosperity, our future, and the next generations. Myriam was in Edmonton for the NCI to ask the question, are our children safe? And as you heard, there were a lot of tears shed in Edmonton because it's not. And what we learned is government overreach, getting involved where they don't belong, and our autonomy and sovereignty has been stepped on. So this could be our chance to go ahead and correct that future so we have a lot less tears for our children. Thank you very much for joining me today. God bless.